started. Trustee Butts will be joining us shortly. Michael, could you take the roll, please?
Ms. Shakarian?
Here.
Mr. Corrigan?
Here.
Ms. Rodriguez?
Here.
Ms. Fryer?
Here.
And Mr. Parker? Here.
At this time, I move for approval of the minutes of the Joint Finance and Human Resource Committee meeting of 9/19/23 and the regular board meeting of 9/21/23. If there's no additions or omissions, I move for adoption.
Second.
Ms. Shakarian?
Yes.
Mr. Corrigan?
Yes.
Ms. Rodriguez?
Yes.
Ms. Fryer?
Yes.
And Mr. Parker?
Yes.
Our first order of business, we have a presentation from Cosgrove. John, is he here?
And
Where's-
I think Shanice was out there trying to hunt him down, and I don't
Well, we
see
can
him
defer
yet.
to when he gets here.
Yeah,
We'll wait until he gets here. We'll just go ahead and move into the Safety and Protective Services report.
Monroe.
Director Brooke Goins?
So Monroe, before you start, in front of everyone is this article that was written by Scene Magazine a couple of days on Monday about the break-ins. And there have been a couple of newscasts about the break-ins as they saw the Cleveland Scene Magazine. I just wanted to make sure that the board understood where we are with the break-ins that have been happening and, what has been going on. And Monroe can kind of give you an overview of that. Obviously, the number one key is there really hasn't been any money taken, but it has been a lot of vandalism and destruction of our equipment that has been the major cost.
That's absolutely true. Good afternoon. So since July 31st through October 1st, we had a series of breaking and enterings at our neighborhood branches, 2 West Side locations and 6 East Side locations. We haven't been able to get much traction on the suspect. We do know that he is an experienced burglar because he wears a mask, gloves. He understands the alarm system and how it works. He's in and out in under 6 minutes. In aggregate, from the 10 instances of the break-ins, there was a total of maybe $39,000 aggregate loss in vandalism to the buildings and to the MFD machines. We believe the MFD machines was the primary target. In each case, the suspect used a ball-peen hammer or some type of device like that and then pried open the MFD machine or anything that looked like a safe. In one instance, I think it was at Langston Hughes branch, there was a room with the word vault written next to it, and he pried that door open. So, we've been working with our law enforcement partners at each police district that covers that location and, providing every support that we can, video, information. We have established some patterns. We believe the suspect is about 5'7". We believe the same suspect broke in all the locations save Glenville, which was the first location. Characteristics of the suspect was completely different from the others. But we can tell how tall he was because at the Lorraine branch, he took a TV, which was 65 inches, and he was only a couple of inches taller than the TV. But he would wear the same coat, it had a tear on the right sleeve. So we're just doing everything we can to work with our law enforcement. Investigations are still active, and we've been getting a lot of support from those police partners.
Monroe, if I could, please, you said there was a $39,000 loss, but that is not what that's lost to us. He might have gotten away with, $100 in monies that was taken from these machines, or what?
A couple $100, but the overtime cost, one MFD machine, which was put out of service, is approximately $8,500. Breaking the windows, we had to install additional security cameras at our Addison location. We created a a task force to try to get to the locations quicker. We incurred some costs from our security vendor, Royce Security. So in aggregate, approximately 38.7.
Right,
Yeah.
right. But he's not getting off with thousands of dollars in his
Oh, no.
pocket. He's getting,
uh,
and that's what I was trying to get
Yeah,
at.
no, it's the equivalent of someone breaking your car window to get change in your change thing. Like you might have $7 that they get and you have to pay $500 to get a new window, right? That's where we are. It's the equivalent of getting quarters and nickels inside the change jar, but he's breaking in the doors
Doing
and
big
windows
damage.
and breaking the machine, which is $8,500 to get in less than, $100 that are in the machine.
Mhm,
Then we took the machines out of the took them and put them in the back so they were not in use any longer. So
Right.
that wouldn't be, an incentive for him to try to break in. And he still broke in and then just left, right? So
Correct.
so the damage was done in breaking the windows to get in, but then he realized that we no longer had him. He's on the in the buildings any longer. So
We had, thank goodness, we haven't had anything since October 1st. And we continue to try to devise strategies to apprehend.
mhm.
Is there a time of day that it's most common for him?
3 a.m. to 7 a.m. is the pattern. And so we work with our security vendor, IPS, to institute some AI technology that's available to us through our camera system that's currently installed. And they have recommended some additional technology. And we're currently working with them to try to incorporate that additional technology. But it's called loiter guard or fence guard. And how it works is if somebody approaches the building, the cameras will alert the security officer working at night to help us get a quicker response to the location in the event that we have some nefarious activity.
Are these pay stations only used now for copies and scans, or is there other point of sale activity that our branches use it for?
To my understanding, other technology is for copying.
yeah, and scans.
I mean, query for future risk management, why don't we just offer free copies for our
That's
patrons?
and ultimately that's what we ended up doing
Yeah.
for that period of time. And we generally offer 5 free copies. And so what we ended up doing was going to what Mrs. Park was it 25 or 50? 25. We went to 25, which pretty much answers anyone's needs or whatever. So there was no money coming in for them to, but this person doesn't know that, right?
Right.
They're
Of course not.
right. And it's just doesn't, the difficult thing for us is that it doesn't make a lot of sense. Once you break in and you get like $62 or whatever to take a risk and continue to break in for change in essence, right? It's a gigantic risk to break in and possibly get caught for what is almost no money whatsoever. So and cause all the damage
Mhm.
that he does, which is in essence to break the glass to get inside the building. So
Ultimately, he's responsible for it, but it just, points to social, environmental conditions in our neighborhoods that cause people to take these type of risks.
Mhm.
I think Tana wanted to add something.
I just said, as we've gotten several immediate inquiries about it, we've just issued a statement that these are part of active investigations, so we don't comment on them, and that, and we refer them to the police department.
I just, it's on a completely separate topic, but since I have Director Goins here, the fentanyl problem is even affected libraries, I think, in Columbus where they've had use. Have we had much problem with in our restrooms or fentanyl?
Yes, so we've had several incidents of people using some type of narcotic. You can't necessarily identify it as fentanyl, but all of our officers are trained to use Narcan,
Okay.
and they carry Narcan. And we've actually had the opportunity to intervene on a couple of instances and revive people prior to the medical service responders getting there. So
That's great.
Narcan is effective.
And I just, because it's my neighborhood, for some reason, the fast food restaurants on 117th Street, not far from that would soon to be reopened, Eastman branch, have had a lot of incidents lately, both on the Lakewood and the Cleveland side. So you may want to keep an eye on it, Eastman, as it reopens.
Thanks for the information. Yeah, all of our officers are equipped with Narcan.
That's great.
Thank you. We're now going to move into a presentation by the Ohio Legislative and Political Update.
Awesome. I just want to introduce Tim Cosgrove, our lobbyist. He's going to give us an overview of HB 33, its implications. He's also going to talk about what we should be focusing on as we move forward into the capital budget and so on. So, Tim?
Thank you much. Again, great to be back. Appreciate the opportunity to talk with you all again. And it's an interesting time in Columbus. The legislature is returned after a very long break. I know we haven't really haven't talked with you all collectively since before the budget, so we're going to talk a little bit about that and kind of where we're going. So with that, if I could have the next slide, and the next one after that. So this is like an operating budget that I have never seen. Actually, the states, and we'll talk a little bit more about this as we go through the presentation. This is an unprecedented time in state government with respect to resources. Not only are state revenues coming in at an extraordinarily healthy pace, although there are some warning signs we'll talk about in a few minutes, it has really been, as I said, unprecedented between all the federal dollars flowing in, between the state revenues. It's just been like something we've never seen. And in that context, there was a new state budget enacted back in June, on June 30th. Actually, I think it was technically signed on July 2nd. They went right up to the last minute. Even though they had all these revenues to deal with, there's still a lot of tension between the House and the Senate, even though it's all controlled by one party. There's a lot of tension on some issues that we'll discuss later. Most importantly, the library PLF, the Public Library Fund, did increase to 1.7%, which, at least in a nominal sense, is important. One of the problem is, and it's interesting, as the budget was introduced, there's a percentage, but in the budget, there's also a projection with respect to how much revenue is actually going to be produced. And in this particular case, they projected $505 million in the first year and $530 million in the second year, or a 2.6% increase in the first year and a 5% increase in the second year. Now, it's a $41.4 billion budget. However, what's interesting about those numbers, and we'll see how they play out over time, what's interesting about those numbers is there was also a $3 billion tax cut. Yet the numbers in the projected money to revenue, the revenue in the line items to flow to the Public Library Fund did not change. Even though $3 billion was taken out, they're still projecting what they originally projected in the governor's as introduced budget. But again, we care about, obviously, these income tax cuts and stuff because it affects the base. And even if they are correct, in that there's enough revenue growth that they meet their original projections, I think that we always have to be careful and conscious of is long-term, it still creates, as you have tax cuts, it creates structural problems. So even though it may not hurt us in the next 2 years, that remains to be seen, it's still something that we have to keep our eyes on long-term. And again, there was a sales tax holiday, there was consolidation of income tax brackets, all of which really totaled $3 billion in tax cuts. Next slide, please. The other thing that's, I think, important to, I just wanted to mention here, and we'll talk a little bit about this later. One of the big issues that's really getting a lot of attention in Columbus is the whole question of property taxes. Obviously, we've all seen, and this is in many respects is driven by, where you live, but the property tax values have skyrocketed. And so as a result, as you do these reevaluations, the people's property tax bills are going up dramatically. And again, in some parts of the state, like for example, in central Ohio, it's pretty dramatic. There are pockets in Cleveland, for example, on the Ohio City and areas like that, where these increases are pretty dramatic. So that is creating a political blowback in Columbus that is something that we need to watch very, very carefully. This property tax study committee was created in the legislature in the budget to try to deal with this issue. Its report is due back by the end of December 2024, so the end of next year. I don't know that the legislature is going to wait that long to start doing things, however. We'll talk about that in a minute. But that's something we need to watch very carefully. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, state revenues have been extraordinarily healthy. They're above target again in this fiscal year, obviously, which started July 1. So July, August, September, the numbers that came out this past month for the first quarter were very good. Interesting dynamic here, by the way. Again, it's $7 billion or $56 billion above estimates, but the non-auto sales performed above. But the personal income tax, so sales tax has performed above expectation, but personal income tax has gone down. That might be a warning sign that income taxes decline. Now, some of that is maybe a result of the tax cuts, but again, those are all estimates, and they should include, some are saying those are tax cuts, but when you write estimates, you assume that the tax cuts are in those. So typically what happens is, income tax may decline, people stop buying things, and then all of a sudden your sales tax declines as well. And the cat tax was down as well. So those might be leading indicators that things are slowing down a bit. Nobody at the state seems to be too alarmed at this point, but just a cautionary note. Next slide, please. So I wanted to mention real quick, we've talked about this before, but it's important to keep in mind as we move forward. Obviously, Ohio is a, in terms of state government, is a deep red. It is a deep, I don't want to say it's permanently deep red, but right now as we speak, it is controlled solidly by Republicans. Both, obviously, all the statewide offices. The House has 67 to 32 Republicans, 26 to 7 in the Senate. But, those numbers, as we've seen play out at the national level, there's a lot of divisions within even the Republicans, which have played out in interesting ways. And candidly, it's been important to Northeast Ohio. Folks like Brian Sweeney, who was extraordinarily helpful to us early on. House Democrats in particular have a little bit more influence as a result of some of this. So, it's not quite what it seems. Next slide, please. I want to mention just redistricting for a moment because, again, this affects our delegation and many of the folks we deal with. Bottom line is they finally agreed on a map. Not sure how long it will be in place. I think there's going to be some legal back and forth over that. But at least for the next 4 years, they've settled. The Democrats in the legislature have agreed to it. And in terms of what's in Northeast Ohio, Cuyahoga County, I think it's all relative, but it's good news for us in that we'll have 2 Republican senators, one of whom is Senator Serena, which will be helpful to us. Another Senator Patton, who has been extraordinarily helpful. Senator Antonio, who is the minority leader, has been a strong supporter. Kent Smith. So the other thing that's interesting is there was a lot of speculation about the new Senate seat that was being created to replace Matt Dolan. Would Bride Sweeney be pitted against Tom Patton? Bottom line is they won't be, which is good because having both of them in Columbus helps us in many, many ways. So you can move up to 2 more, please. Again, this is just kind of a breakdown of what Cuyahoga County will look like in the future. Does not change a whole lot for Cleveland, but again, we tend to focus. We've had a lot of success working not just with our Cleveland delegation, but with the regional delegation as well. You could do 2 more, please. I mentioned this because you're talking about the legislative calendar. The General Assembly is in right now, and it's kind of spotty. I suspect that they will meet 2 or 3 times between now and the end of the year, and I don't see candidly a lot of issues affecting us other than there's a piece of legislation out there dealing with property tax. We're going to talk about that in a few. That may get some attention that we may want to follow. I just mentioned these ballot issues because it really is, in some respects, regardless of where one stands on these, it really does kind of define the political environment in Columbus right now. There's a lot of focus on these, depending on how it turns out, how the November elections turn out, will affect the environment. I should mention issue 2, which is the legalization of marijuana. I think there's some misunderstanding about that. Excuse me, that is an initiated statute, which means that the General Assembly, even if it passes, it's a statute, the General Assembly can change it. And there may actually be some stuff in there just from a library perspective to kind of protect what goes on your property and stuff that, we may at some point want to engage in if that passes, because it's pretty broad right now, and our ability to restrict, for example, there's some question you can prohibit smoking, smoking is prohibited in your libraries under state law. There's a question of whether or not you could prohibit, smoking marijuana in a library, the way this is written. So some of that stuff, to the extent that you hear those things, some of that stuff I suspect will be dealt with subsequently in legislation.
Interesting loophole.
Yes.
May provide new opportunities for community events.
Oh,
my goodness.
The next one, please. Again, we talked a bit about the calendar. I want to talk about next year as well. When the budget passed, I'm jumping ahead a little bit here, but there are a few critical things that the General Assembly needs to do between now and the end of the year. One of them is a capital reappropriations bill. There's likely to be a corrective bill. When you pass a bill that's, I think it was 5,000 pages long, you make a lot of mistakes, so they have to come back and clean up some of those mistakes. There's also this strategic investment fund, which there's been a lot of discussion about. That is likely to be allocated, before the end of the General Assembly. Given the fact that we have a primary, we have a presidential primary and a legislative primary in March, Easter is at the end of March. I think what you're going to see is probably a month of activity in February, and then it's going to be on hyper status after probably mid-April through May, and that's when a lot of these things will be resolved, including potentially property tax issues. Next, please. So in terms of priorities, I said property tax legislation. That's something that's getting a lot of attention. Budget corrective legislation. Housing is also a very big issue. There's a lot of tension back and forth between the House and the Senate. There's a new low-income housing tax credit that was enacted by the state that the Senate's pushing back on. So there'll be a lot of those discussions, I suspect. But then again, the capital bill and the one-time strategic investment fund. One of the things that was included in the House Bill 33 budget was a fund of $700 million. There was a lot of dispute back and forth. The House had funded a lot of projects because there was so much cash, and the Senate removed most of those projects, created a fund and said, let's talk about this later, and we're going to talk about one-time strategic investments, so we're not just it's not kind of pork barrel stuff. So my sense is that will be resolved. Probably they're not going to do it before the primary. I would look at May or June as a target for resolution on that. There's been very little discussion, if any, between the House, the Senate, and the governor with respect to how they want to approach that. There are supposed to be some guidelines released probably later this month. They've been saying that for a while. So we'll see. But this thing is going to take a lot of twists and turns between now and the time that it's ultimately concluded. But that's going to be a big issue. Next, please. And again, I'm sorry, I'm talking fast. Please feel free to interrupt if you have questions. Property tax, there's a bill pending right now that actually passed the House that would, rather than, and Cuyahoga County, as I understand it, has their reassessments coming out next year. So what this bill would do, and folks, there really has been no opposition to this, but one of the things that it would do would be to average the property values over a 3-year period. So there wasn't this dramatic jump as a result of one reevaluation. I think a lot of folks who depend on the property tax, including schools, libraries, are kind of sitting back and watching this, trying to figure out, how this would work. But that did pass the House. The other language in there, which I think many people, myself included, view as a little bit dangerous, is that it would really remove a lot of the decision-making from the Department of Taxation, the Board of Tax Appeals, and place it in the county auditor. That is, I don't think county auditors are real wild about that because it puts them in the middle of a lot of these disputes. But it also could end up with a very disparate kind of approach to valuing property, which may run afoul of the constitutionality of it because we have a uniform tax. The Constitution requires statewide uniform application of the tax. So that's going to be an interesting issue. Again, as I said, it passed the House. It's moving over to the Senate. Met with the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, had some conversations with him. I think they're a little bit skeptical of some of these approaches. I don't see this passing between now and the end of the year, but it is, again, we just need to be extraordinarily careful and stay on top of all these discussions with respect to property taxes because they could turn on a dime and really have an adverse effect on us. Again, there's a series of, that was House Bill 187 that I was talking about, and there are other bills that would temporarily modify the valuation methods, all of which, of course, would have an adverse effect on us. Next slide. That's just a list, or the previous one was a list of all the various legislation. So where do we go from here? First of all, and I want to commend obviously the director and Shanice. We've done a lot of work in terms of building relationships with our members. I still love the Jerry Serino story. That was a year ago, but that has really inured to our benefit in so many ways, and his affinity with the library. One of the things, the nice thing because the calendar's kind of light, we really have an opportunity to continue to kind of reach out, develop those relationships. There's going to be new members. Probably shortly after the primary, we'll know who many of those are. So part of what we need to do is just continue in coordination with some of our partners to develop those relationships. We've already had some initial conversations with respect to potential opportunities, whether it's the Strategic Investment Fund, which are, I'm not sure how that's going to be approached regionally, but that may be an opportunity, the capital budget. And so those are opportunities that we have to continue to monitor. As I said, property tax is going to be a very big deal for us. And the other thing, and I didn't put it on here, but there's one of the things that I don't think is going to go away are a lot of these, what I'll call social issues that have floated around the General Assembly. Right now, a very big issue, for example, is Senate Bill 83 does not affect us directly. It deals with higher education and trying to, in many ways dictate kind of curriculum at the college level. We're going to see more of that. And we've dealt with some of these issues in terms of, again, I won't even get into it, but we're all aware of what some of the proposals are. We're going to have to continue to keep our eyes on those as well. And so far, we've been pretty, there's a pretty good batting average on that stuff, but we got primaries coming up, and there's going to be a lot of craziness going on.
Tim, can I jump in here on a second? Only because I always try to think of the big numbers. With a 4.7 billion budget, that's the annual amount, right? The library and local government fund ends up being about almost 11. Well, it's 11% of that, the amount that's being set aside. So 505 and 530 is 11%. But that's the library and local government fund. How do we distinguish? Not that we take them on because they're our allies, but how much of that is library and how much of that is local government?
So the 505 million, that's all library fund.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm drawing a blank. The local government fund, separate line item.
Separate line item.
That's
So,
a separate line item.
okay, so I mean, one of the things that we should, as a board, should wear on our sleeves is that, 11% support for libraries puts Ohio in the lead, I can assure you, across the country. There's no other state budget that's putting 11% into public libraries. And then when you put the support we have locally, to put it in the most negative tax way that some extremists and the other party that I don't belong to say, we tax for libraries higher than any place in the world in the city of Cleveland, between what the state pays and what our voters have approved. So we really have to be kind of appreciative of that when the radical on the right wants to attack taxes and how much gets collected. So I just wanted to make sure that we kind of had in our head, Ohio continues to be the most generous place for public libraries in the country.
And for the most part, most legislators, or I would say the majority of legislators tout that as a great thing.
Yes.
But there are a handful of folks who say, why do we have to be number one? Candidly, one of the things we benefit from is that, a lot of these libraries in rural districts depend exclusively on the PLF, which helps us, right? So we're given the fiscal situation, I feel fairly comfortable. But, as I was reminded by someone the other day, these things can turn around quickly, so we can never take our eyes off that.
Well, Representative Serino is pretty conservative on taxes and on those things, but he's still a big library supporter.
Yes.
So we kind of have to keep identifying that with the people who are very anti-tax and make sure that they still understand how much the libraries depend on.
Yes, he was a strong advocate. So anyway, those are our next steps. We really need to take advantage of the kind of lull and continue to work with our coalition partners. And again, I do say that I want to repeat, and this is consistent with your point, there will be a budget corrective bill coming up. I don't anticipate, just because of the economic situation that we're in, that it's going to in any way adversely affect us. Probably our biggest threat out there now is this property tax discussion. So we'll just have to keep watch on all that. And before you know it, by the way, sometime in the second quarter of next year, they'll start planning for the next budget. So,
Related to issue 2 and the potential social equity fund, is there talk about what that could look like based on revenues? And is there room for library funding in the definition of what they're saying is a social equity fund?
good question. And that goes back to my earlier point. That's, if enacted, that is an initiated statute.
Mm-hmm.
And first of all, I suspect one of the first things, I'll bet a lot of money on this one. Shouldn't say that in here, but I would just, I strongly believe that one of the first things that the General Assembly is going to do is they are going to raise the tax rate that is currently proposed in that statute.
Mm-hmm.
That will go up. In terms of where it's directed to, I think there's a lot of, whatever that statute says, my guess is it's not going to stay the same. But going back to the point that was made, a lot of people are going to say, geez, you guys are doing well. Why would we direct more money your way? And that may be one of the counter arguments to that. But the answer is no, none of that. And issue 2 is carved in stone. And I can assure you that if it passes, the General Assembly will come back and they will modify it in many ways. One of which is the tax, the revenue, and where it goes.
Thank you very much, Tim. If there's not any more questions, we appreciate all the hard work you're doing for us. Thank you so much. Thank you, Shanice.
Say hello to Nate for us too.
Yeah, and Claire.
And Claire, yeah.
Director, I think you can confirm this, but for all these openings we're having, for instance, I know we've had the representatives and senators all on the invite list, but if there's anything we can do as board members to reiterate those invitations, I think we'd all be happy to do that.
Absolutely. Love that.
At this time, because there was no joint finance or human resource committee meeting on Tuesday, October 17, 2023, I move to temporarily suspend the regulations of the Board of Trustees in Article 9 and 10 requiring referral of the resolutions to committees to consider the following resolutions.
Ms. Shakarian,
Yes.
Mr. Gordon,
Yes.
Ms. Rodriguez,
Yes.
Ms. Fryer,
Yes.
and Mr. Parker.
Yes.
We're going to go out of order a little bit today, and from this point moving forward. At this time, we're going to go ahead and have the director provide us with an update.
Thank you, Trustee Rodriguez. I want to start first with some introductions, and I'd like Mrs. Parks to introduce our managers who are in the room today. We always appreciate them being able to get a little better understanding of what happened at the board meeting. And so maybe you can put some faces to who are at some of the branches, and most of the folks here are main managers as well.
Good afternoon. I'm going to start from the back, and I'm going to start with the main managers first, and we do have some branch managers who joined us today as well. So when I call out your name, please stand up so our board can see who you are. So first we have Sarah DeBransky. Sarah DeBransky is the manager for General Research Collections. So Sarah,
Thank you, Sarah.
next we have Milos Markovic. Mr. Markovic is the manager of International Language.
Thank you.
Don't ask him to tell you a joke.
Anisha Jeffries is our manager of the Youth Services Department. We have Dimba, and I'm gonna say Dimba D, because I don't want to mispronounce your last name. Can you say your last name?
Diawara.
Okay, Diarra. He is our manager of our shelf division. Moving to the front of them, we have Don Boozer, who is our manager of the literature department.
Thank you, Don.
We have Olivia Hoagie. She is the manager of Center of Global and Local History. And I want to thank Ms. Hoagie in front of everyone, because while we have Robin Wood, who's going to be away for at least 3 weeks, Ms. Hoagie has taken the opportunity to support me and help with a lot of the day-to-day so that I don't have to do it. So I thank you very much.
In that role, I would like to make sure you, Jen, behind you.
What is that? And so next, we are going to go in front of them, and I have Steve Wood, who is the senior manager of lending and logistics.
Thank you, Steve.
Next to Steve Wood, we have Steve Capuzzo, who was the manager of the Jefferson branch, but has been awarded the opportunity to be the manager of the social sciences department and the public administration library.
Nice, congratulations.
And we have Jennifer Chumba. She is our manager of the popular library.
Thank you, Jennifer.
I think that took care of all of Maine. And now we're gonna go to our branches. So with the branches, we have Peter Roth. He is the manager of the Glenville campus.
Thank you, Peter.
Hi, Peter.
In the back, we have Tammy Houghton. She is our assistant manager who's been providing a lot of support to our branches in the absence of a manager. And she's currently supporting our union on campus.
Thank you, Tam.
We have Jaime DeClerc, and he is our manager of the South Branch.
Never met him before.
We don't know him at all.
We have Shayla Boyce, who is our manager of the Mount Pleasant branch.
Thank you, Shay.
We have our own Lexi K, and I call her Lexi K, the Lexi Kamaichik, and she is the manager of the Rice branch. We have
Thank you,
Marcy
Lexi.
Williams, our Hub campus manager.
I'll see you Saturday.
Yes.
And we have Michael Darby, he is our regional director for the West. And we have Crystal Tanchak, and she is our regional director for the East.
Thank you.
So I think I covered everybody.
Thank y'all for everything you're doing.
We miss Susie Perez for being part of public services. But she's our manager for Tax Central. We miss you.
So we moved.
Under IT.
Susie's under IT, but everybody's battling for her. even the union. So that's a whole story.
Thank you so much.
All right. And then I would like to introduce also Stephanie Jansky. Stephanie is, yes, you could say, Stephanie is the director of board and executive something operations. Yes. So she'll be working with the board very closely to align and move some initiatives forward from the board and for the executive team as well.
I have some ideas. This is great.
Yeah.
This is great.
And finally, with my board report, every month I'm going to bring to you the strategic plan so that we can be super focused on how the strategic plan is moving forward and how things are moving. And I think they're working to bring it up here. Let's see. All right, there we go. And as we said, we're still working through some of the kinks of the strategic plan. So we want to make sure that we bring this to you over the next few months so you can help us define for you what are the things the board really wants to hear from us about how what we're doing with the strategic plan. And so I'll turn it over to Tana real quick to kind of give you a quick overview and ask you guys some questions.
So the scorecard that we're trying to establish is just a summary of many of the initiatives that we're working on and trying to give you a general sense of green, yellow, red stoplights of how things are progressing. Because many of these, it goes by priority and it's really a general overview. If you want to go to the next slide, just as an example. So these are, for each of the priority areas within the strategic plan, it's really the measures that have been set up for those specific initiatives and then an overview. Some of these are 2026 kind of goals. So we sort of try to establish anything that we have numbers for. We have glossaries that is able to kind of define what is included in those. We took 2022 just to try to get some baseline numbers, and then want to just be able to report progress towards these goals. But again, many of these are 2024, 2025, 2026 goals. So you may see us sort of, in terms of status, you may see green or yellow just based on those, because they're not necessarily things that you might be able to see from month to month. And then just going through each priority and trying to give you a general indication. If there is a particular topic that we want to dig into or dive deeper into, we can certainly bring that to you. You can just scroll through the next few slides. So
Can I ask a question real quick? How are we going to be gauging the yellow, green, red? What are the parameters that you're looking for so that we could use that?
It'll depend on the initiative, because some of them have straight numbers, some of them are more just, it is, what phase is the project in? So many of the chiefs will indicate whether they feel it is a green, a yellow, or a red, and then if you have questions, they, certainly can answer those questions. But there's digital literacy. Next one is workforce development. And then moving to the next slide and there's the People's University priority. Going to the next slide, creative. So facilities master plan, capital enhancements, digital access, closing service gaps. And then the last is the fourth priority in terms of operating with excellence. So this is the general format. But question for the board is, the director indicated that he would like to bring to you a particular topic each board meeting. We can go by priority area, just go 1, 2, 3, 4, or if there is a specific area that is of interest to you, we can bring that to you. So I don't know if there's a preference in terms of what you would like to see.
I think the one thing I could say, and I don't know if I would be able to answer you right now at this minute, I think for me, and I'm probably speaking for Trustee Butts too, kindergarten readiness, but I think if we could have this slide available to us so that we could look it over and review it to see what our interest equates.
So we'll send you the scorecard. If there are things on the scorecard that the board sees as more important that they'd like to, because each of these different goals have sub-goals underneath them.
Mhm.
And so we can go into what is happening with those and just kind of bring those to you.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah, I think a deeper dive into the priorities and select sub goals, but as Francis shared, I mean, I might want to think about which ones I'm most interested in and come back to you with that feedback for future agendas. The
Yeah.
deeper dive occasionally on key ones, they're all key, right? Like
Oh,
these are
yeah.
all our priorities, but I think where especially we can provide extra help and support to leadership would be terrific. Yeah.
I think so too.
And finally, you see it in your director's report. There was a great story about one of our staff members, Jen. Jen, do you want to tell the story? I didn't. Yes, it deals with baseball.
Oh, yes, so, an older lady and a gentleman came walking into the popular library, and on the end cap was a copy of The Maid by Nita Prose, super popular. So I never sit behind the desk, I always get out and I talk and want to recommend books, and she, picked it up, had it in her hands, and, did you read this? Yes. I really liked it. What'd you like about it? Quirky character. She pulls out from her purse a list of all the New York Times bestsellers and asks me about a couple others. Yes, I had read them. So she says to the man with her, Mike, ask her what to read. She's read everything in here. I said, no. And he's like, I like spy novels. So we had the latest John Le Carre, so I recommended that. Daniel Silva, he's like, oh my God, exactly what I read. But I have something right now. They both had on Guardians gear. I didn't think much of it, and he had a hat on, which I've never seen him wear a hat. And when they were leaving, I realized it was Mike Chernoff, the general manager of the Cleveland Guardians.
Nice.
They quizzed me on who was pitching that night, and so.
That's awesome.
That is an awesome story. Love it.
Yeah.
Many times we never know who we're helping.
You're right.
Yeah.
That is great.
And that's it for the director's report.
Thank you. And just to piggyback on one of the topics the director said, Stephanie will be getting in contact with you. So if you ever hear, instead of Michael does a great job, is always helping us. But we'll also be hearing from Stephanie as well. So she'll be provided with our preferred contact method. So in case you see anything, which I already missed an email from her. So we're going to get that together and make sure she knows how to reach us. So
I just was going to point out one thing, and that is that the archive, our wonderful flower, has had
Oh, yeah.
33,000 visitors.
That is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So pretty cool.
That's awesome.
Come here on a Saturday and you will
The
see
wedding photos.
place that and all the wedding photos happening here. It's as busy as it should be on a Saturday, and that's what we want.
well, not only that, I mean, social media is blowing up
Yeah.
with that. I mean, this is a very big exhibit, and I'm glad we're here for the people.
Right.
And for anyone else who is coming to Cleveland, there's people who are coming in for other concerts or whatever, and they're making sure to stop here because they saw it on social media.
Yeah.
At least that's what I was told by a couple of people. They're like, oh yeah, we saw it on social media, so we got to go to Cleveland to see that, or when we're here. So that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
Kinda
Todd.
Just to add on to that, we've had several news stories about the archive on the most recent being on Applause with WVIZ, and they also posted that on social media, their local social media channels, and then NPR nationally picked up the story.
Oh,
So
how
Mhm.
cool.
it's nice.
And just, for the record, how long is the exhibit up for still?
It'll be through June.
Through June. Oh, well, that'll be nice. So that everybody really gets a chance to see that. And also, part of my report, I just got back from Buenos Aires, Argentina. I went there for the MetLib IFLA conference. It was very interesting. Argentina is very interesting. It's so different. Just speaking with other folks and meeting them and meeting other directors that were past library directors and just talking about, one of the big topics that they had at this conference was banned books. And one of the comments that came out of that, and it really struck a chord with me because that is something that's happening with us here and everyone else, is that it is the adult's responsibility to filter for their child in regards to library materials and not the librarians. You know, so that with me struck a chord. You teach your children at home. You are their first educator, as Father Mark would say at St. Pat's. You teach your kids first, then they come to us, and we will expand on that. So I just thought that was something very interesting for us, and just to be out there and being able to share with what we're doing here. And I think we're doing great things. Everybody knew Felton. So the next thing is they were all impressed with all the work that's being done here, and we do attribute that, a lot of that, to you. So thank you.
No, I did. I got a number of texts with your picture on it saying, Maritza is off the hook. They love you. They
Yeah.
loved you there. So it was very good. I was happy that you were there to represent us, even if they continue to ask you to pay with cash for everything. So
It was interesting there. But the nice thing about it too, on the last day, I decided to wear a pair of jeans and my People's University t-shirt. I got so many compliments that next year they said on the last day of the conference, they're going to ask everybody to bring their own library t-shirts to wear, to share. And even got a couple orders of people wanting the People's University sweatshirts and t-shirts. So, yeah, I just thought that
got to do a little bit better on that gift shop there,
I'm
Shanique.
just saying, send them our way.
Yeah, so nope, and I told them I would help fulfill their orders. We got to work on getting some online shopping done, but I think that might be something that we have to work on next. But I just thought it was very interesting how they were able to connect, and there were people from all over the world. There was the one gentleman was from Lithuania, the one girl was from India, Germany. It was just all over, and just comparing what everybody is doing and sharing notes. And I think I could bring some of that back here and hopefully incorporate that into what we're doing here at CPL.
Thank you for representing us.
Oh, yeah, a lot of fun. We are now going to move into the Finance Committee report. Trustee Corrigan, please.
Yes, Exhibit 1 is a resolution to accept the gifts for the month of September. Resolved that the gifts described in the gift report for September of 2023 be accepted on the conditions connected with said gifts in accordance with Section 3375.40K of the Ohio Revised Code. So moved.
Second. Ms. Shakarian?
Yes.
Mr. Corrigan?
Yes.
Ms. Rodriguez?
Yes.
Ms. Ryder?
Yes.
Mr. Parker?
Yes.
Whoops.
Resolution number 2 comes in as number 1 again. Somehow that, but I do have
Yeah, I'll do it off the print.
a print version of it. Let's see. If I can
Oh.
find it here.
Yeah,
Resolution number 2. All right, thought I had it.
Mine, you could read mine, but ignore all my highlights and scratch.
that's all right. Exhibit 2 is a resolution to amend the agreement with Kone Incorporated. Is that how they pronounce it, right? Kone, for maintenance of elevators in the branches. Whereas in order to consolidate library maintenance services under one contract, the board in 2019 authorized the library into agreement with Kone for maintenance of elevators at Main Library, Lewis Stokes Wing, Carnegie West, Eastman, Martin Luther King, and South Brooklyn branches. Whereas Kone has proposed to add the West Park branch elevator to the library's master service agreement for a monthly cost of $415 for the final year of the agreement, which will increase the cost of the final year agreement by $4,980 to a total cost of $82,025.60. Now therefore be it resolved that the board hereby authorizes the executive director, CEO, or his designee to amend the master service agreement with Kone Incorporated to add maintenance to the elevator at West Park Branch for a monthly fee of $415 for the period beginning October 15, 2023, and ending on September 30, 2024, with the additional expenditure of $4,980 being charged to the general fund account 1797005-53340, building maintenance, and authorizes the executive director, CEO, or his designee to execute any instruments or agreements as are necessary to effectuate such amendment, which shall be subject to the direct approval of the Director of Legal Affairs. So moved.
Second. Ms. Shakarian?
Yes.
Mr. Corrigan?
Yes.
Ms. Rodriguez?
Yes.
Ms. Fryer?
Yes.
And Mr. Parker?
Yes.
Exhibit 3, a resolution to accept a grant from the Cleveland Foundation for Digital Navigators. Whereas the Cleveland Foundation launched the Digital Excellence Initiative in 2017 to ensure all residents can successfully participate in the digital world and economy, to elevate Greater Cleveland's infrastructure, talent, and research prominence in digital technology. Whereas the Cleveland Public Library has participated in that Metro-wide Digital Navigators program since 2022, and the Cleveland Foundation has awarded the Cleveland Public Library a grant for $50,000 dedicated to advancing digital navigators services in our community. Therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Cleveland Public Library, pursuant to the authority set forth in RC 3375.40K, hereby accepts a grant from the Cleveland Foundation in the amount of $50,000 to be deposited into the Founders Fund account 203046100-20301, restricted gifts for the grant period from October 1, 2023 to September 30, 2024, and be it further resolved that the executive director, CEO, or his designee is authorized to enter into such agreements and instruments as may be necessary or appropriate to effectuate the terms and conditions of this resolution, which agreements and instruments shall be subject to the approval of the Library Director of Legal Affairs. So moved.
Second.
Ms. Shakarian?
Yes.
Mr. Corrigan?
Yes.
Ms. Rodriguez?
Yes.
Ms. Fryer?
Yes.
And Mr. Parker?
Yes.
Exhibit 4 is a resolution to amend the agreement with Integrated Precision Systems, Inc. for access control systems, where on November 17, 2022, the board authorized the library to enter an agreement with Integrated Precision Systems, Inc., IPS, to provide and install alarm systems, access control systems, and security cameras for the Phase 1B project of the Facilities Master Plan for a total contract price of $338,077.29. The library is determined to adjust, it's necessary to adjust the scope of the work to regarding security cameras at Eastman Branch, and IPS has proposed to address this issue, installing 15 new cameras at the Eastman Branch for an additional fee of $9,854.77. And whereas the library requests authorization to amend its contract or IPS to adjust to that scope of work. Therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Cleveland Public Library hereby authorizes the Executive Director, CEO, or his designee to enter into agreement subject to the approval of the Director of Legal Affairs to the agreement with IPS for the purchase and installation of additional security cameras at the Eastman Branch for a cost not to exceed $9,854.77, increasing the total contract price to an amount not to exceed $347,932.06 to be paid from the Building and Repair Fund 401-73805-55300 construction improvements. So moved. And John talked to us about these new cameras at previous meetings, so this is the exhibit.
So these are more cameras now at Eastman than originally planned. Is there a reason for that?
So the Director Goins and his lieutenants did a walkthrough. Our security layouts were designed prior to his arrival, and so we view these as an enhancement to the
Okay.
original design.
That's cool.
Ms. Shakarian?
Yes.
Mr. Corrigan?
Yes.
Ms. Rodriguez?
Yes.
Ms. Fryer?
Yes.
And Mr. Parker?
Yes.
Exhibit 5 is a resolution authorizing amendment to the agreement for moving services related to the main library high-density mobile storage project. I'll start out by pointing out that Corrigan Moving and Storage Company is not related to my branch of the Corrigan. On December 15th, 2022, the board authorized the library into agreement with Corrigan Moving and Storage Company in an amount not to exceed $218,000 for moving services and shelf cleaning related to the installation of high-density shelving in the Lewis Stoke swings. whereas the total contract price included a contingency of $19,896.50 to cover unanticipated costs. Library is pleased with the services that Corrigan has provided thus far and desires to amend the contract to include additional moving services, including shifting a portion of the portfolio collection in the Lewis Stokes Wings Vault, relocating oversized materials, consolidating government documents collection on the 8th floor, and relocating shelving from the 9th floor to the central distribution facility. Whereas Corrigan has proposed to provide the above described additional services for a fee not to exceed $52,960. Whereas the library believes it's in the library's best interest to amend the contract to authorize this additional services, and therefore be it resolved that the Board of Library Trustees hereby authorizes Executive Director CO or his designee to amend the agreement with Corrigan Moving and Storage Company doing business as Corrigan Moving Systems to increase Corrigan's total compensation to amount not to exceed $268,444 to cover additional services described in this resolution, which amount shall be charged to the general fund account 19010053-53710 professional services, and which amendment shall be subject to the approval of the library's Director of Legal Affairs. So moved.
Second.
And if you haven't been up to see the progress, you're missing out. It's amazing what's going on.
It may be nice at a future board meeting to have a presentation on the status of the timeline of this.
Michael Ruffing would love to do that.
I was wondering where he was.
If he'd be asking for you guys to take a tour today if he wasn't on vacation.
Yep.
So we will make sure next month we will set that up.
And just when I was in Argentina, they had that at the National Library of Congress down at the downstairs because they don't have open shelves.
Mm.
So all they have are those
High
stats like what we had. I was like, oh my gosh, we have those.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
It's been moved and seconded. Go ahead.
Mr. Kerrigan?
Yes.
Mr. Corrigan?
Yes.
Ms. Rodriguez?
Yes.
Ms. Fryer?
Yes.
And Mr. Parker?
Yes.
Exhibit 6 is a resolution authorizing an agreement with R.E. Warner and Associates for professional design services for the Lewis Stokes Wing Roof Replacement Project. We've talked about this before. September 21, 2023, the board approved the selection of R.E. Warner and Associates as the top-ranked, most qualified firm, whereas the library estimates the total project cost for the roof project will be $1,200,000 with a construction budget of approximately $1 million. Whereas R.E. Warner Associates has submitted a proposal for professional design services for the roof in the amount of $94,000 plus expenses, which consists of $69,000 in services, $19,000 for services during the construction phase, and permits and administering construction equipment inquiries and awards, and a $5,000 design contingency. Whereas the board finds the fee for these services appropriate and responsible, fair and reasonable, be it resolved that the board authorizes Executive Director CO or his designee to execute an agreement with R.E. Warner and Associates Incorporated in an amount not to exceed $94,000 for the professional design services for the roof project upon such terms and conditions as approved by the library's Director of Legal Affairs, and such other documents as are necessary or appropriate to effectuate the agreement in accordance with the resolution, with the expenditure of $94,000 being charged to the Building Repair Fund account 4019011055300-20901 construction improvements. So moved.
Second.
Mr. Kerrigan?
Yes.
Mr. Corrigan?
Yes.
Ms. Rodriguez?
Yes.
Ms. Fryer?
Yes.
And Mr. Parker?
Yes.
Exhibit 7 is a resolution authorizing agreement with IKM Architecture for professional design services for the Lewis Stokes Wing restroom renovation project. Again, we talked about this before, and on September 21st, the board approved the selection of IKM Architecture as the top-ranked, most qualified firm for the restroom project, whereas the library estimates the total project for the restroom project to be about approximately $400,000 with a construction budget of $325,000, whereas IKM Architecture has submitted a proposal for the professional design services in the amount of $52,500, and that's broken down between the design phase, the construction phase, and the building and permits, and a $3,500 design contingency. Whereas the board finds the fee for the architectural engineering professional design services for the restroom project to be fair and reasonable. Now therefore be it resolved that the board authorizes the executive director, CEO, or his designee to execute an agreement with IKM Architecture in the amount not to exceed $52,500 for the professional design services for the restroom project upon such terms and conditions as are approved by the library's Director of Legal Affairs and such other documents as are necessary or appropriate to effectuate the agreement in accordance with the resolution, with the expenditure of $52,500 being charged to the Building and Repair Fund account 401-901-05-55300-21901, construction improvements. So moved.
Second.
1 second.
Mr. Shakarian?
Yes.
Mr. Corrigan?
Yes.
Ms. Rodriguez?
Yes.
Mrs. France?
Yes.
Mr. Parker?
Yes.
Exhibit 8 is a traditional monthly Eighth Amendment to the year 2023 appropriation. It's not traditional for it to be the Eighth Amendment, but Eighth Amendment to this year anyway. Whereas Ohio Revised Code 5705.0 provides for the amendment of appropriation measure when necessary, it's now deemed necessary to amend the appropriation measure to comply with the amended official certificate requested from the County Budget Commission. Whereas the aggregate of all appropriation classifications does not exceed the total amount submitted to the Budget Commission, now therefore be resolved that the sums indicated in the attached Eighth Amendment of the year 2023 appropriation schedule be approved. So moved.
Second.
And Carrie, what's the most significant thing here?
We're appropriating in our building and repair fund for the architect agreements and the Eastman cameras.
Okay.
That's the biggest, and then we're appropriating in the founders fund for the digital navigators grant.
Great.
Mr. Corrigan?
Yes.
Mr. Corrigan?
Yes.
Ms. Rodriguez?
Yes.
Ms. France?
Yes.
And Mr. Parker?
Yes.
The balance of the Finance Committee report is the Fiscal Officer's Report, Report A for that month, current month, Report on Investments, Report B, the Report on Conference and Travel Expenditures, Report C. Report D is a report on all vendor expenditures. Report E, which is a report on the expenditures made from the owner's contingency fund for Huff, Jefferson, West Park, Woodland, Central Distribution Facility, Lorraine, Eastman, MLK Junior, Brooklyn, and Rockport. Report F, a report on expenditures made for the owner's contingency fund for the high-density shelving project, Report F. And Report G is the fees paid for legal and consulting services for the period 7/01/23 to September 30th, 2023. And those are all in order and have been previously in your packet. That concludes the Finance Committee report.
Thank you, Trustee Corrigan. We're now going to move into the Human Resource Committee report. In Mr. Hairston's absence, Trustee Shakarian will be reviewing it with us, please.
All right. For the Human Resources Committee report, we have Exhibit 9, which is the regular employment report, which highlights the new hires, resignations, terminations. Lynn or the director, any?
There is a point Lynn needs to make.
So we're looking at this month, we filled about 25 positions, we've lost about 9, but the director asked me to give you a preview for next month. We have about 55 offers out for
Oh,
November
my.
orientation.
Wow.
And if all of those people accept and onboard on November 8th, our branches will be at full staff and our total staff numbers will rise to about 650, which is pretty close to pre-pandemic levels in terms of.
Congratulations.
Our staff's starting to relax a little bit more now that there's more staff coming in.
Well,
But we're trying.
Yeah, a lot of HR has been doing phenomenal work, but also the public services and their staff have done a lot of work to make this happen. So kudos to everybody. I was like, make this happen. And they
It's
figured it
happening.
out. So I appreciate it.
And it's the sort of thing that shows why Ohio's income for taxes is still going up, because there's a fair amount of hiring going on post-pandemic, more than people anticipated. So
Good stuff. Good stuff.
For the retirement, how many years of service did Dale Dickerson
well, you
have?
have to move
Oh.
Exhibit 9 first, yeah.
Uh,
So I'll second.
Thank you. Sorry.
And Ms. Shakarian?
Yes.
Mr. Corrigan?
Yes.
Ms. Rodriguez?
Yes.
Ms. Fryer,
Yes.
and Mr. Parker.
Yes.
I see, the retirement is the next. I'm sorry. Dale Dickerson, 19 years of service, retired September 30th, 2023. So can I have a motion to recognize?
Second. And
Ms. Shakarian,
Yes.
Mr. Corrigan,
yes,
Ms. Rodriguez,
Yes.
Ms. Fryer,
Yes.
and Mr. Parker.
Yes.
He's not, but John, do you want to say a little bit about Dale?
Dale worked in our collection management unit. He's a wonderful gentleman. He is known for his skill at getting things done. We built a new department called High Committee to get things out to our staff faster. So we wish him well on his retirement. He will be missed, especially as we are moving all of our team over to Woodland. So thanks to Dale.
and when did we start the high demand? When was that reform initiated?
Actually, take me back. What do you think, Carrie? Like 2004?
Yeah, something like that. That's what I was thinking.
Very close to a couple decades.
Oh.
Excellent.
Exhibit 11 is a resolution designating executive director and his designee serving on boards of nonprofit organizations as serving in their official capacities. Whereas the Ohio Ethics Commission and the Ohio Attorney General have opined that a public official may serve as a trustee or executive director of a nonprofit with which their public entity contracts, provided that certain requirements are met, including requirements that the public official's governing body formally designates the officer as serving the nonprofit in his or her official capacity, and that it formally instructs the public official to represent the governmental entity and its interests. And whereas the executive director and other members of the library's executive leadership team serve on boards of various nonprofit organizations whose interests, missions, and strategic goals are aligned with or complement those of the library, which organizations are listed in Exhibit A to this resolution. And whereas of the organizations listed in Exhibit A, the library currently has contracts or memberships with Campus District, Cleveland Public Library Foundation, Greater Cleveland Chinese Chamber of Commerce, Greater Cleveland Food Bank, Greater Cleveland Urban Film Festival, LaCeres, Ohio Library Council, and University Circle Incorporated. And whereas the executive director desires to designate certain library employees to serve in his place on boards and committees of certain nonprofits listed in Exhibit A, and whereas the Board of Trustees desires to adopt this resolution in compliance with the aforementioned opinions of the Ohio Ethics Commission and the Ohio Attorney General, now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Cleveland Public, we need to amend library, approves and formally designates that the executive director, CEO, and his designees, including those members of the executive leadership team that are identified in Exhibit A, as long as they serve on boards and committees of those organizations listed in Exhibit A, or other nonprofits in the future, provide those services in their official capacities of representatives of the Cleveland Public Library, and further instructs the same individuals to represent the interests of the Cleveland Public Library while so serving. I move that we approve the resolution.
second,
Ms. Shakarian,
Yes.
Mr. Corrigan,
yes,
Ms. Rodriguez.
Yes.
Ms. Fryer,
Yes.
and Mr. Parker.
Yes.
and you'll note that the Attorney General's advice and Ethics Commission advice pertains to people who are paid or employed by the library. So for instance, my being on the foundation board doesn't need to be in this resolution because I'm not a designated and paid person of the public entity. Isn't
You
that
didn't get
right?
your check this month?
I'm right, Brian, isn't that the reason?
Yes.
Okay.
And the balance of the report are the reports on paid sick time, employee demographics, insurance summary report. Is there anything further to add, Director Erlin?
That's just the reported report.
All right, and that concludes the human resources report.
Thank you, Trustee Shakarian. We're now moving into the Community Service Committee report. Trustee Parker, please.
Yes, report page, monthly activity report, so circulation. I want to go in this order for the next presentations: building status update, advocacy task force update, foundation update, and diversity, equity, inclusion update. You can go in that order.
From the building report perspective, the property management report indicates fairly routine activity over the last month. We are in the shoulder season, moving from cooling season to heating season. That's always busy for our maintenance mechanics. On the FMP capital construction side, I'd like to share a few updates. The Eastman Branch Excited Downs will be opening on October 28th. That's noon, a week from Saturday. We've also offered a tour of the MLK building site to board members on Friday, November 10th. And we'll do that. It's just the MLK site with box lunches in the old branch after the walkthrough of the new construction site. We have not established an opening date for Brooklyn yet, but I do expect final inspections to occur over the next 30 to 60 days. And we're anxiously awaiting delivery status of our furniture and shelving. Glenville project, I'm not sure if Peter's still here, he is, but that project is being bid right now. I had a nice presentation with Shanice's team and the Mandel Foundation last month that was well received. The construction manager has got all the design documents and is bidding right now. We had a community engagement event for the construction contracting community about 3 or 4 weeks ago at Glenville, so we're hopeful for a good turnout on the bids for Glenville. And the goal will be to bring the GMP amendment with the overall project budget to board in December. The Walls project, I was able to join our partners at Northwest Neighborhoods, CDC, at the City Finance Committee 2 weeks ago. That was for $1 million city grants, which is nearly closes their gap financing. That was sponsored by Councilperson Spencer. She's a great advocate for us. President Griffin co-sponsored, so that was great, and it was approved at the full board city council meeting later that evening. So they are in the home stretch. They've got 60 days to close all their financing, and then we hope to be rebidding the Walls Caron project in early 2024.
Perfect.
Those are my updates.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, ma'am.
And I never noticed this. My daughter noticed this. Going down Ridge Road, the county library there, do you know at night, the light, it says Brooklyn Branch, Cleveland Public Library? They never changed it. During the day, it looks like they covered it with a county logo. But at night, I never noticed this. I don't know if any of you go down Ridge where the Brooklyn,
Mhm.
it's the county, but it says Cleveland, Brooklyn Branch.
Interesting.
Security? That sounds like something you need to
Do you
investigate.
know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know exactly where you're at.
If you go at night,
Yeah, Jenny's-
my daughter noticed it. She goes, "Look, Mom." I'm like, I said, "That's not our Brooklyn branch," but it does say it.
Yeah.
What did you say?
We'll just take credit.
It's
for
ours
it.
at night.
It's
It's ours
ours,
at-
but I know that used to be ours many
Yeah.
years ago,
So we'll bring something to you with the overview,
and I was just like, oh,
because it used to be our branch. but-
it used to be our branch, and I think the sign they just
On Ridge
took
Road?
something. Yeah, the old over there by
In the
Brookside
city?
entrance.
Oh.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm talking about? So there's that sign there, and I never noticed it, but it looks like they put something on top of it. But at night, all you see is Brooklyn Branch,
Mm.
our old Brooklyn Branch sign.
Because I know they're building a new one there.
Well, maybe they'll change it then, or they're waiting for that. But anyway, sorry, John.
Confused. I'll have to go look.
Mm.
At night, you only see it. It only shows up when the lights are on.
As far as the advocacy report, we heard from Tim Cosgrove, and I just would invite the new board, yes, sir. As far as the advocacy report, we heard from Mr. Cosgrove, but I would like to invite the new board members, if you want to go down to Columbus in April, as all the 250 public libraries come together to advocate for public libraries. We'll keep you posted on the date. We'd love to have you join us. And as for the foundation report, I just want to thank the board, of course, Director Thomas, and everyone in this room who has been very helpful for our event tomorrow. We hope you all will be there. We have distributed and sold upwards of 400 tickets. We have some wonderful silent auction items from the Cleveland Browns, from the Guardians, and a cool behind the scenes tour from the Rock Hall. So if you want to bid, and some fly fishing stuff for anyone who wants to do fly fish, that. And then, oh my goodness, there was one more point. And we will feature John Skirdick and Mike Polk, who's going to do a really cool entertainment segment on old Ohio or Cleveland
Yeah,
photographs.
history of Cleveland.
The history of
Oh my
Cleveland.
God.
So,
Or using our library images, we'll be showing. And we can have a banter back and forth.
It's very, very funny.
Oh, the
Oh,
band.
For
I'm
those-
sure.
Those of
wait.
you who
I
have a
can't
chance,
wait.
it is very, very funny. They do a great job.
And John's very popular on social media.
Yes, he is.
Everybody's like, do you know John Skirnick? I think I do.
And also to Robin Wood and her team, we actually are bringing some special collections down to the first floor and just some wonderful contributions. So thank you for your support and look forward to you joining us.
Nice.
And are we going to announce numbers at that event?
No, we're gonna announce our numbers where we are today, but the big reveal, Director Thomas wanted at the December 2nd community celebration and parade.
Okay.
It's gonna be a big reveal with Holly Erica.
But our numbers are good for when somebody asks tomorrow, like we can report good numbers.
They're wonderful from what, yeah.
Good afternoon.
Ms. Bart.
Good afternoon. So as we look to build partnerships under the realms of diversity, equity, and inclusion, I have 3 developing partnerships to report on. The first one is Village of Healing. On Wednesday, September 20th, a team of branch managers along with executive leadership participated in a tour of the facility, Village of Healing. There we had a tour as well as a Q&A session with program manager Jacqueline Bradshaw. We also had a brainstorming discussion about how CPL could partnership with the Village of Healing. I'm not sure if you all are familiar with the Village of Healing, but it is the first clinic here in the city of Cleveland devoted to supporting Black women. We receive health care. They've also been given another grant to set up another medical facility in the Shaker, Cleveland area. So we are undergoing talks with them as well. The second partnership that I would like to report on is our partnership with John Adams High School. Our Rainbow Readers Employee Resource Group has recently developed a collaboration with Jane Addams students under the direction of teacher Charles Ellenbogen. We have our junior Rainbow Readers who identify as part of the LGBTQ plus community, who we met with on Thursday, September 21st. We talked about a number of different things, including our Cleveland Reads initiative, a number of books that the students could identify with, as well as some of the initiatives that we have going on here at CPL and how they can get involved. And our third partnership that we are currently exploring is with the Cleveland Site Center. We are looking to enhance our services to the disabled patrons and diversify our workforce by increasing our recruitment efforts to actively employ people with disabilities. We have undergone talks with the Cleveland Site Center, which includes their community-based workforce development program, as well as training for staff regarding blindness in their basic training, Intro 101. So those are my 3 updates in terms of partnerships under development through diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Excellent.
Thank you.
And that concludes the Community Service Committee report.
Thank you. I don't see that there's any public comment, but I did forget to give a shout out to Marina. I know it was a last minute thing. Max Hayes is having a family carving contest, and I was contacted that they were trying to do a children's reading corner. So it was a last minute thing, and I called and she came through. So
Thank you.
Max Hayes will have at their family event, the children's reading corner. I do appreciate everything that I'm sure all of us are involved in the community in one way or another. When something is needed, director, we make a phone call and it happens. So this is another time and place where all it takes was a phone call to make sure that Cleveland Public Library is represented all through the city. But thank you so much for everyone. And this time I call the meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Well done.
GS, what? So at this time, I'm getting this updated.